Victoria Chen stood in front of the full-length mirror in the restroom of the Atherton Country Club, smoothing down the emerald green fabric of her sleeveless dress. The color brought out the warm undertones in her fair brown skin, and for once, she actually felt beautiful instead of just presentable. Tonight was the culmination of 6 months of meticulous planning, the annual International Business Summit that brought together some of the wealthiest entrepreneurs and corporate leaders from across the globe. As the lead event coordinator, Victoria had personally overseen every detail, from the imported orchid centerpieces to the specific mineral water each guest preferred. She adjusted the thin straps one more time and noticed that the dress had shifted slightly, exposing more of her left shoulder than she intended. The intricate lotus flower tattoo that covered her upper arm and shoulder was now fully visible, its delicate petals rendered in black ink with remarkable detail. The design spiraled upward from just above her elbow to the curve of her shoulder, each petal shaded with such precision that it almost looked three-dimensional. Victoria had gotten it 5 years ago during the darkest period of her life, and while she never regretted it, she usually kept it covered at work. Professional settings in places like Atherton, one of the wealthiest zip codes in America, did not always appreciate visible tattoos. She reached for her shawl, intending to drape it over her shoulder before heading back to the ballroom, when her phone buzzed with another urgent message from her assistant. The photographer had questions about the positioning for the group photos. With a sigh, Victoria tucked the phone into her small clutch and stepped out into the marble corridor, momentarily forgetting about covering her tattoo. The hallway was a masterpiece of understated luxury, with cream-colored marble floors that gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Large windows overlooked the meticulously maintained golf course, and the late evening sun cast golden light across everything. Victoria was mentally running through her checklist when she felt it, the weight of someone's stare. She looked up and found herself locked in eye contact with a man standing about 20 feet away. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that seemed to command the space around him. His dark hair was styled simply, swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and intense focus. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than Victoria made in 3 months, but it was not the expensive clothing that made her breath catch. It was the way he was looking at her. Or rather, the way he was looking at her tattoo. His dark eyes were fixed on her exposed shoulder with an intensity that bordered on shock. His expression, which had probably been neutral moments before, now showed something Victoria could not quite identify. Surprise, certainly, but also something deeper. Recognition, maybe, or disbelief. He had stopped walking mid-stride, and the 2 men flanking him, clearly assistants or bodyguards, had also stopped, looking confused by their boss's sudden freeze. Victoria felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the dress. She quickly reached for her shawl, draping it over her left shoulder to cover the tattoo, but the man's gaze did not waver. If anything, his focus intensified. Then he started walking toward her with deliberate, measured steps that suggested he was a man used to getting what he wanted. Her professional instincts kicked in. Victoria had dealt with wealthy, powerful men in this job for 3 years, and she knew how to handle unwanted attention. She straightened her spine, preparing to politely but firmly redirect whatever this was, when he stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was even more striking, with a face that looked like it had been carved from stone and eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed professional demeanor. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice was deep, accented with the particular cadence of someone whose first language was Korean. "Your tattoo. May I ask where you got it?" The question caught Victoria completely off guard. She had expected a pickup line, maybe a comment about her appearance, but not this. Not a question delivered with such barely contained urgency. "I'm sorry," she said, playing for time while her mind raced. "The lotus on your shoulder," he continued, and now she could see that his hands were clenched at his sides, as if he was physically restraining himself from reaching out. "The design, it is very specific. I need to know where you got it." There was something in his voice that was not quite desperation, but close to it. Victoria's instinct to brush him off wavered. This was not the usual entitled behavior she dealt with. This was something else entirely. "I got it in San Francisco about 5 years ago," she said carefully. "Why?" Before he could answer, her earpiece crackled to life. "Victoria, we need you in the ballroom right now." The senator's dietary restrictions were not communicated to the kitchen, and the chef is having a meltdown. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, summoning patience. Of course, something had gone wrong. Something always went wrong at these events, no matter how carefully she planned. "I'm sorry, I have to go," she said to the man, already turning toward the ballroom. "There's an emergency I need to handle." "Wait," he said, and there was such command in that single word that Victoria almost stopped. Almost. But she had a job to do, and she could not afford to stand in a hallway having a strange conversation with a guest, no matter how intense his eyes were. "Enjoy your evening," she called over her shoulder, already moving quickly down the corridor. She could feel his gaze on her back the entire way until she turned the corner and disappeared from view. For the next 3 hours, Victoria was consumed by the controlled chaos of managing a high-profile event. She soothed the chef's ego, arranged for a completely separate meal for the senator, redirected a lost guest who had wandered into a restricted area, and coordinated the timing of speeches and presentations with military precision. But even as she worked, a part of her mind kept circling back to the man in the hallway. The way he had looked at her tattoo like it held answers to questions, she could not begin to guess. During a brief lull while the keynote speaker delivered his address, Victoria stood at the back of the ballroom, scanning the crowd to ensure everything was running smoothly. Her eyes found him almost immediately. He was seated at a table near the front, surrounded by other expensively dressed individuals who were clearly important players in whatever business he conducted. But while everyone else at his table was focused on the speaker, his attention kept drifting around the room, searching. When his eyes found hers across the distance, Victoria felt an electric jolt run through her. For a moment, neither of them looked away. Then one of his companions said something to him, breaking the spell, and Victoria forced herself to focus back on her job. By the time the event concluded at 11 o'clock, Victoria was exhausted. She supervised the initial cleanup, ensured the night crew knew their tasks, and finally collected her coat and purse from the staff room. Her feet ached in her heels, and all she wanted was to go home to her small apartment in Palo Alto, take off this dress, and sleep for 12 hours. She was walking through the now-quiet corridor toward the employee exit when she saw him again. He was standing near the main entrance, clearly waiting. When he spotted her, he straightened and began walking in her direction. Victoria's heart rate picked up, though she could not have said whether it was from anxiety or anticipation. "Miss," he called out, "please, I apologize for approaching you again, but this is important." Victoria stopped, every instinct telling her to keep walking, to maintain professional boundaries. But that same something in his voice made her stay. "I'm sorry, but I don't even know who you are," she said, which was true. She had memorized the names and faces of the most important guests, but she had been so busy that she had not identified everyone. "My name is Kang Dongwoo," he said, and even if Victoria had not recognized the name, the way his assistants flanked him at a respectful distance made it clear he was someone significant. "I am the CEO of Kang Enterprises International. We manage shipping logistics and private security consulting operations across Asia and North America." Victoria nodded, trying to place where she had seen that company name, probably on the guest list somewhere. "Okay, Mr. Kang. I still don't understand why my tattoo is so important to you." Dongwoo glanced at his assistants and said something in rapid Korean. They immediately stepped back, giving them privacy. When he looked back at Victoria, his expression had shifted into something more vulnerable. "The lotus design you have is not just any tattoo," he said quietly. "It is rendered in a very specific traditional Korean style that is extremely rare. The artist who created that particular technique was my grandmother's younger brother. He left Korea 40 years ago and severed all contact with our family. I have been trying to find him for the past decade, and 2 years ago, I learned that he had passed away in California. I have been searching for anyone who received his work, hoping to understand why he left and what his life was like after." Victoria's mind reeled. The old man who had given her this tattoo, who had changed the trajectory of her entire life with his quiet wisdom and refusal to accept payment, had been this man's great uncle. "He passed away," she whispered. She had never gone back to the shop after that night, too caught up in rebuilding her life, but she had always assumed the old man was still there, still helping lost souls find their way. 2 years ago, Dongwoo confirmed. "I am sorry if you knew him and I have delivered bad news." "I only met him once," Victoria said, "but he changed my life." The look Dongwoo gave her was so intense it almost hurt. "Would you be willing to tell me about it? Please. I do not make a habit of tracking down strangers, but this is important to me in ways I cannot fully explain." Victoria looked at this powerful, wealthy man who was asking, not demanding, for her time and her story. Every reasonable part of her brain said to decline politely and go home. But the tattoo on her shoulder seemed to pulse with warmth, and she remembered the old man's kind eyes and gentle hands. "Not tonight," she said finally. "I have been working for 16 hours and I need to sleep, but if you give me a way to contact you, maybe we can talk later." The relief that washed over Dongwoo's face was remarkable. He pulled a business card from his jacket and handed it to her. "My personal number is on the back. Please call or text whenever you are ready. I will make time." Victoria took the card, their fingers brushing briefly. "I'm Victoria, by the way, Victoria Chen." "It is an honor to meet you, Victoria," he said with a slight bow that seemed natural rather than performative. "Thank you for being willing to speak with me." As Victoria finally made her way to her car, she found herself turning the business card over in her hands, studying the elegant print. She should probably just throw it away and forget this whole strange encounter. But instead, she tucked it carefully into her purse. Victoria woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the blinds of her small bedroom in Palo Alto and the smell of coffee wafting from the kitchen. She stretched, feeling the pleasant ache of tired muscles, and checked her phone. It was almost 10 in the morning. She had slept for nearly 11 hours straight. Wrapping herself in a robe, she padded out to the kitchen where her roommate and best friend Chelsea Park was sitting at their small table, laptop open, coffee mug in hand. Chelsea was a software engineer at a tech startup in Mountain View, and she usually worked from home on Saturdays, often still in her pajamas until noon. "The living dead rises," Chelsea said without looking up from her screen. "How was the fancy event?" "Exhausting but successful," Victoria said, pouring herself coffee from the pot Chelsea had made. "No major disasters, just the usual small fires to put out." "Good. Oh, by the way, someone left something at our door this morning. I brought it in and put it on the counter." Victoria turned to see a cream-colored envelope with her name written on it in elegant script. Her heart did a small flip as she picked it up, already suspecting who it was from. "Who delivered this?" she asked, opening the envelope carefully. "No idea. I heard a knock around 8, but by the time I got to the door, whoever it was had already left. Why? Is it something sketchy? Should I be worried?" Inside the envelope was a single sheet of expensive stationery with a handwritten note in the same elegant script as the envelope. "Dear Victoria, I apologize for the unconventional method of contact. I would very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about my great uncle and the work he did. If you are willing to meet, there is a quiet cafe in downtown San Jose called Serenity Coffee House. I will be there tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon and will wait for 1 hour, hoping you will join me. If this is too forward or makes you uncomfortable, please simply disregard this message. Either way, I am grateful you spoke with me last night. Respectfully, Kang Dongwoo. P.S. I have also included my business card, in case you would prefer to arrange a different time or place." Victoria pulled out the business card, studying the embossed logo of Kang Enterprises International. The company name triggered a memory, and she grabbed her own laptop, pulling up a search. "What's going on?" Chelsea asked, now paying full attention. "Remember that thing I told you about last month? How I got my tattoo from this old Korean artist who wouldn't take any payment?" "Yeah, the one who basically saved your life during your darkest time. What about him?" Apparently, he was the estranged great-uncle of a Korean CEO who was at the event last night. The guy saw my tattoo and has been trying to find anyone who got work from his great-uncle. Chelsea's eyes widened. Okay, that's actually kind of crazy. What are the odds? Right. Victoria pulled up search results for Kang Dongwoo and started reading. Oh, wow. The search results were extensive. Dongwoo was 34 years old, the current CEO of a multi-billion-dollar international company that had started in shipping, but had expanded into security consulting and trade negotiations. There were articles about his business acumen, photos of him at various international summits and conferences, and a few pieces that delved into his family history. Victoria clicked on one of those articles and started reading aloud. The Kang family has a complicated past in South Korea. Dongwoo's grandfather was allegedly involved in organized crime during the post-war period, but by the time Dongwoo's father took over, the family had fully legitimized their operations. Current CEO Kang Dongwoo has worked to distance the company from its historical reputation, focusing on transparent business practices and international expansion. So his family used to be actual gangsters? Chelsea asked, leaning over to read the screen. That's simultaneously terrifying and kind of hot. Chelsea. What? I'm just saying, there's a reason these romance stories are popular. Rich guy with a dangerous past wants to meet you in a cafe. That's literally a romance novel plot. Victoria closed the laptop. This is real life, not a story, and I haven't even decided if I'm going to meet him. Are you serious right now? Of course you're going to meet him. When was the last time something this interesting happened to you? Interesting is one word for it. Potentially dangerous is another. Chelsea gave her a long look. Victoria, you're the most cautious person I know. You check Yelp reviews before trying a new brand of yogurt. If your gut is telling you this is sketchy, then listen to it. But if you're just scared because he's a powerful, mysterious man who tracked down where you live, well, I can see how that might be a little creepy. But it's also kind of romantic in a stalkerish way. You're not helping. I'm never helpful, but seriously, it's a public cafe in the middle of the afternoon. What's the worst that could happen? If he turns out to be weird, you leave. If he's genuine, maybe you get some closure about the old man who helped you. And if he's hot and single, well, that's a bonus. Victoria spent the rest of the day debating with herself. She went for a run through the neighborhood, hoping the exercise would clear her head. She did laundry, cleaned the apartment, and meal prepped for the week. But her mind kept circling back to the note and the memory of Dongwoo's intense eyes fixed on her tattoo. By Sunday morning, she had made her decision. She would go to the cafe, but she would set boundaries. 1 hour, public place, no promises of anything beyond a single conversation. She dressed carefully in jeans and a light sweater that covered her tattoo, pulled her hair back in a ponytail, and drove to San Jose. Serenity Coffee House was located in a nice part of downtown, a cozy establishment with large windows and an artistic vibe. Victoria arrived 10 minutes early and sat in her car, watching the entrance. At exactly 1:55, a sleek black car pulled up, and Dongwoo stepped out. He was dressed more casually than at the event, in dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him look younger and less intimidating, though no less commanding. He entered the cafe alone, and Victoria waited another 5 minutes before following. When she walked in, she spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table by the window, and he stood the moment he saw her, his face transforming with relief. "Victoria," he said as she approached, "thank you for coming. I was not certain you would." "I almost didn't," she admitted, sitting down across from him. Up close, in natural daylight, she could see details she had missed the other night. He had a small scar above his left eyebrow, and his eyes were not pure black but a very dark brown. There were faint shadows under those eyes, suggesting he had not been sleeping well. "I appreciate your honesty," Dongwoo said, sitting back down. "And I appreciate your time. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee, tea?" "Green tea, please." He signaled the server and ordered her tea and a black coffee for himself. Once the server left, an awkward silence settled between them. Victoria could see him searching for the right words, trying to figure out how to begin. Your note said you wanted to know about your great uncle, Victoria prompted. Yes, Dongwoo said, looking grateful for the opening. But first, I want to apologize again for the way I approached you at the event. I know it was inappropriate and probably unsettling. And showing up at your home was even worse. I am not usually so. Forward. Then why were you this time? Because I have been looking for any trace of my great-uncle for 10 years, Dongwoo said simply. He disappeared from Korea before I was born, and my family never spoke about him. I only learned of his existence when I was in college and found old family photos hidden in my grandmother's things. When I asked about him, she became very upset and refused to discuss it. She died 5 years ago without ever telling me why he left. The server brought their drinks, and Victoria wrapped her hands around the warm cup, studying Dongwoo's face. His pain was evident, the kind of deep-rooted ache that came from unanswered questions and family secrets. I spent years searching, he continued. I hired investigators, followed every lead, and finally traced him to San Francisco. By the time I found the location of his tattoo shop, he had been gone for 2 years. The building had been sold, his belongings disposed of. It was like he had been erased. So you have been looking for his work instead, Victoria said, understanding now. Yes, the lotus design he created was unique to him. My grandmother had one on her shoulder, which is how I recognized it on you immediately. She told me once, before she knew I was asking about her brother, that the lotus represented second chances, rising from the mud to bloom clean and beautiful. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. Those were almost the exact words the old man had used with her. He said something similar to me, she said quietly. Dongwoo leaned forward slightly. Will you tell me about it, please? I need to understand what kind of man he became after he left. Victoria took a sip of her tea, gathering her thoughts. She had never told this story to anyone except Chelsea, and even then, she had left out the darkest parts. But something about Dongwoo's raw honesty made her want to be equally honest. 5 years ago, I was in the worst place I had ever been in my life, she began. My mother had just died after a 4-year battle with early-onset dementia. I had spent those years taking care of her while trying to work whatever jobs I could find. I lost my scholarship to college, lost all my savings, lost most of my friends who got tired of me never being available. When she finally passed, I was 25 years old with nothing to show for my life except debt and grief. She saw compassion flash in Dongwoo's eyes, but no pity, which made it easier to continue. I started making bad choices, hanging out with people who were not good for me, drinking too much, just generally spiraling. One night I was in San Francisco, and I was in a really dark headspace. I was walking through Japantown, and I honestly do not remember how I ended up in front of that tattoo shop. But the door was open, and I walked in. Victoria could still remember that night with perfect clarity. The shop had been small and cluttered, with beautiful designs covering every wall. And sitting behind the counter had been the old man, with kind eyes and hands that looked like they had lived 1,000 lives. He took one look at me and told me to sit down. He did not ask what I wanted or if I had an appointment. He just started preparing his tools, and then he started drawing on my arm. I sat there for almost 6 hours while he worked, and the whole time he barely said anything. But his presence was so calm, so steady, that I felt something in me start to settle. What did he say when he finished? Dongwoo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He told me that the lotus grows in mud but blooms above the water. He said I would bloom too, but only if I chose to. And then he refused to take any payment. He said the work was already paid for by the life I was going to live. A single tear rolled down Dongwoo's cheek, and he wiped it away quickly, looking almost embarrassed. That sounds exactly like something he would do. My grandmother used to tell me stories about him when I was very young, before she stopped talking about him. She said he could see people's souls. I believe it, Victoria said. That night changed everything for me. I went home and I started making different choices. I enrolled in community college part-time. I got a job working for an event company as an assistant. I cut off the people who were dragging me down. It took 3 years, but I clawed my way back to a life I could be proud of. And every time I wanted to give up, I would look at this tattoo and remember what he said. choose to bloom. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the story settling between them. When Dongwoo spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for telling me that. It means more than you can know. My family has always wondered if he was happy after he left, if his life meant something. Knowing that he was still doing this, still helping people, it gives me a sense of peace I have not had in a long time." "Can I ask why he left in the first place?" Victoria asked. Dongwoo's expression darkened slightly. "I do not know the full story, only pieces I have put together over the years. My family was involved in some very dark things back then. My grandfather ran criminal operations, and it was expected that all the men in the family would participate. My great-uncle apparently refused. There was a confrontation, and he left Korea and never came back. My grandmother was devastated. She loved her brother, but she loved her husband too, and she was caught between them. That must have been incredibly hard for everyone involved." "It shaped my entire family," Dongwoo said. "My father legitimized the business before I was born, but the reputation followed us. Even now, there are people who see me as nothing more than a gangster in an expensive suit. I have spent my entire career trying to build something clean and honorable, but the whispers never stop." Victoria heard the pain in his voice and recognized it. The weight of other people's perceptions, the struggle to be seen for who you truly are rather than who people assume you must be. "For what it is worth," she said, "you did not have to come find me. You did not have to be vulnerable enough to share your family's complicated history with a complete stranger. That takes integrity." Dongwoo met her eyes, and something passed between them. A recognition, a connection that went beyond their shared link to his great-uncle. "Would you be willing to meet again?" he asked. "I would like to hear more about your interaction with him if you remember any other details, and I would like to get to know you better if that is acceptable." Victoria knew she should say no. This man was from a completely different world, with complications she could not begin to understand. But when she looked at him, she did not see a powerful CEO or the heir to a reformed criminal empire. She saw someone who was lonely and searching for connection, just like she had been that night in the tattoo shop. "Okay," she said, "but let's be clear about something. I do not do games or drama. If this is going to be anything other than you asking me questions about your great-uncle, I need honesty." "You have my word," Dongwoo said with a small smile. "I do not do games either. I have spent too much of my life navigating other people's deceptions to add to it myself." They exchanged phone numbers, real ones this time, and talked for another hour. Dongwoo told her about growing up in Seoul, about the pressure of being the heir to a controversial family business, about his younger sister Hana who was currently pushing back against their father's traditional expectations. Victoria told him about growing up in Oakland, about her mother's decline, and the guilt she still carried for sometimes resenting the burden of care, about her slow, painful climb back to stability. When they finally left the cafe, the sun was setting, casting everything in golden light. Dongwoo walked Victoria to her car, and before she got in, he reached out and gently touched her arm, right over where the tattoo was hidden beneath her sweater. "Thank you," he said simply, "for keeping his legacy alive, for being proof that he continued to make a difference." Victoria drove home feeling lighter than she had in months, though she could not quite explain why. When she got back to the apartment, Chelsea took one look at her face and grinned. "So," Chelsea said, "how was your definitely not a date with the hot Korean CEO?" "Shut up," Victoria said, but she was smiling. Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria and Dongwoo fell into a pattern of meeting regularly. He had extended his stay in California, explaining to Victoria that he needed to finalize some business deals in the area anyway, though she suspected he was making excuses. They met at different locations across the Bay Area, each chosen for its quietness and relative privacy. A small cafe in Cupertino tucked between tech campuses. A bench overlooking the water in Sausalito, where the boats bobbed peacefully. A bookstore in Berkeley, where they could browse and talk without drawing attention. Each conversation peeled back another layer. Dongwoo told her about the loneliness of his position, how every relationship in his life had been transactional in some way. Business associates who wanted his connections, Women who wanted his money or the thrill of dating someone with a dangerous family history, even friendships that felt performative. He had learned to trust no one completely, to always keep his guard up, and it had left him isolated. Victoria understood that isolation in her own way. After her mother's death, she had shut people out, afraid of being hurt or abandoned again. Even now, with a life she had rebuilt piece by piece, she kept people at arm's length. Chelsea was her only truly close friend, and even Chelsea did not know all of Victoria's scars. It was during their fourth meeting, sitting in a quiet corner of a garden in Los Altos Hills, that Victoria decided to tell Dongwoo the full truth about the night she got her tattoo. They had been talking about turning points, those moments when life pivots in a new direction, and Dongwoo had shared about the day he decided to take over the family company instead of walking away from it entirely. "I was 23 and finishing my MBA at Stanford," he said, looking out over the perfectly manicured gardens. "I could have stayed in America, started my own company completely separate from my family name. But my father was getting older, and I realized that if I walked away, everything he had done to legitimize our business would be wasted. My younger cousins would take over, and some of them do not have the same commitment to staying clean. So I went back to Seoul and took the position, knowing it meant a lifetime of fighting against perceptions and whispers." "Do you regret it?" Victoria asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Especially on the days when I am accused of things I did not do simply because of my last name, but mostly no. I have built something I can be proud of, even if not everyone sees it that way." Victoria took a deep breath. "The night I got my tattoo, I was not just in a bad place emotionally. I was actively planning to end my life." Dongwoo's head snapped toward her, his eyes wide with shock. "I had it all planned out," Victoria continued, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. "I was going to walk to the Golden Gate Bridge. I had looked up the statistics, knew that the fall was almost always fatal. I was in Japantown because I was working up the courage to get on the train that would take me there." "Victoria," Dongwoo breathed, and she could hear the anguish in his voice. "But something made me walk into that tattoo shop instead. And your great uncle, he looked at me, and I swear he knew exactly what I was planning. He did not try to talk me out of it with empty platitudes or false optimism. He just started drawing. And as he worked, he talked about the lotus, how it does not bloom despite the mud, but because of it. The mud is necessary. The struggle is what makes the flower beautiful." By the time he finished, hours had passed, and the moment had passed too. I remember looking at the tattoo in the mirror and thinking, okay, maybe I can survive one more day. And then one more day became another, and eventually I was not just surviving anymore. I was living. Dongwoo reached over and took her hand, his grip firm and warm. "I am so grateful you walked into that shop. I am so grateful he was there, and I am so grateful you are here now." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, not needing words. Victoria had never told anyone the full truth about that night, had never admitted just how close she had come to not being here. But telling Dongwoo felt right, felt safe in a way she had not experienced before. "Can I tell you something?" Dongwoo said eventually. "I have never had a relationship where someone saw me as just a man, just Dongwoo. Everyone wants something from me or sees me through the filter of my family name. But when you look at me, I feel like you are seeing the actual person underneath. It is terrifying and wonderful at the same time." "I know exactly what you mean," Victoria said. "After my mother died, people either pitied me or admired me for being so strong, but nobody just saw me. They saw the tragedy or the triumph, never the messy, complicated person in between." That afternoon marked a shift in their relationship. The conversations became more personal, more vulnerable. Dongwoo told her about his sister Hana, who was 23 and currently fighting their father's attempts to arrange a marriage for her with the son of another prominent Korean family. He told her about the pressure he felt to produce an heir, to marry someone acceptable to the family's traditional values, and how much he resented that his personal life was treated as another business transaction. Victoria told him about the guilt she carried for sometimes wishing she could have had those 4 years of her life back, for resenting her mother's illness even while she loved her desperately. She told him about the night terrors she still sometimes had, dreams where she was back in that hospital room watching her mother fail to recognize her own daughter. She told him about the complicated relationship she had with success, how every achievement felt fragile, like it could all be taken away at any moment. They discovered they had more in common than their connection to his great uncle. Both had been shaped by loss and responsibility. Both had built protective walls around themselves. Both were lonely in ways they had learned to hide from the world. It was during their 5th meeting, walking along the beach in Half Moon Bay, that Dongwoo reached for Victoria's hand again. This time, it was not a gesture of comfort but something more intentional. He laced his fingers through hers, and when she did not pull away, he smiled. It was the first genuine, unguarded smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his entire face. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Victoria said, her heart beating faster. "This is okay." They walked like that for over an hour, talking and laughing, and for the first time since her mother's death, Victoria allowed herself to imagine a future that included letting someone in completely. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. That evening, as Dongwoo walked her to her car, he hesitated before saying goodbye. "Victoria, I want to be honest with you about something. I came to California to find information about my great uncle, and I found that. But I have stayed for you. These past 2 weeks have been the best I have had in longer than I can remember. I would like to continue seeing you if you are open to that. Not just as someone who can tell me about my family history, but as someone I am genuinely interested in getting to know." Victoria's mind raced. This was the moment where she needed to decide if she was brave enough to take this risk. Every logical part of her brain listed the reasons this was a bad idea. He lived in Seoul, she lived in California. He came from enormous wealth and complicated family dynamics. She was still paying off debt and rebuilding her career. His life was public and high pressure. She valued privacy and stability. But when she looked at him, she saw someone who understood her in ways no one else ever had. Someone who had seen her darkest truth and had not flinched. Someone who was just as scared and lonely as she was, hiding behind a different kind of armor. "I would like that too," she said finally. "But we should probably be clear about what this is. You live in Seoul, I live here. How would this even work?" "I do not have all the answers," Dongwoo admitted. "But I am willing to figure it out if you are. I can travel here regularly and you could visit Korea. We can take it slowly, see where it goes. No pressure, no expectations except honesty." "Honesty I can do," Victoria said. Dongwoo stepped closer, and for a moment, Victoria thought he might kiss her. But instead, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you for giving this a chance," he said softly. "For giving me a chance." As Victoria drove home that night, her hand still tingling from his kiss, she felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile, desperate hope of someone just trying to survive, but the strong, steady hope of someone ready to truly live. When she got home, Chelsea was waiting with wine and questions. Victoria told her everything, and Chelsea listened with growing excitement. "So you are dating a Korean CEO with a reformed crime family background and a connection to the man who saved your life," Chelsea summarized. "Girl, your life has become a whole romance drama." "It is not that dramatic," Victoria protested, but she could not help smiling. "Not that dramatic? Victoria, this is literally the plot of every romance story I have ever read. Rich, mysterious man with a dangerous past falls for the strong, independent woman with a tragic backstory. There is probably going to be conflict and misunderstandings and some big dramatic gesture before you end up together. This is real life, not a story." "Real life can be dramatic too," Chelsea pointed out. "Just promise me you will be careful. I know you like him, and honestly, from everything you have told me, he seems like a good guy. But his world is really different from yours. Just keep your eyes open." "I will," Victoria promised. Over the next week, Victoria and Dongwoo continued to see each other almost daily. He took her to an exclusive restaurant in Los Gatos where they had a private room, and she tried Korean food she had never experienced before. She took him to her favorite taco truck in San Jose and laughed at his surprised delight when he tasted real California street tacos for the first time. They went to a concert in San Francisco, walked through art galleries in Palo Alto, and spent a quiet afternoon at a botanical garden in Woodside. With each date, Victoria felt her walls coming down a little more. Dongwoo was patient and thoughtful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He remembered small details she mentioned in passing. He made her feel seen in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. It was during a dinner at Dongwoo's hotel suite in Menlo Park that things shifted to another level. He had arranged for a private chef to prepare a meal combining Korean and American cuisines, and they ate on the balcony overlooking the city lights. After dinner, they sat on the couch, and somehow Victoria ended up tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "I have to return to Seoul in 3 days," Dongwoo said quietly. "I have been putting off meetings and delegating as much as I can, but there are things that require my physical presence." Victoria had known this was coming, but hearing it still made her chest tighten. "I understand. How long will you be gone?" "Probably 2 weeks, maybe 3. But Victoria, I want to make something clear. This is not me leaving and disappearing. I will call you every day if you want. Video chats, messages, whatever you need to feel connected. And I will come back as soon as I can." "I do not want to be the reason you neglect your responsibilities," Victoria said. "You are not. I am choosing to make you a priority. There is a difference." He turned slightly so he could look at her directly. "I have spent my entire life putting the company first, putting my family's expectations first. For once, I want to put what I want first. And I want this. I want you." Victoria's breath caught. "Dongwoo." "You do not have to say anything back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. These past few weeks with you have made me happier than I have been in years, maybe ever. You make me want to be brave enough to build a life that is mine, not just the one I inherited." Victoria reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. "I want this too. It scares me how much I want this, but I am tired of making decisions based on fear." Dongwoo leaned down and kissed her, gentle and questioning at first, then deeper when she responded. Victoria melted into him, all her defenses finally crumbling completely. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I am falling in love with you," Dongwoo whispered against her lips. "I know it is too soon to say that, but it is true." "It is not too soon," Victoria whispered back, "because I am falling in love with you too." They spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in each other, talking and kissing and making promises about the future. When Dongwoo finally drove Victoria home well past midnight, she felt like she was floating. The next 3 days passed in a blur of stolen moments. Dongwoo had to start handling business again, preparing for his return to Seoul, but he made time for Victoria every day. They had breakfast together, lunch when his meetings allowed, and dinner every evening. On his last night in California, he gave her a gift, a delicate necklace with a small lotus pendant made of white gold. "So you will have a reminder," he said as he fastened it around her neck, "of the mud we both came from and the way we chose to bloom anyway." Victoria touched the pendant, tears in her eyes. "I love it, I love you." "I love you too," Dongwoo said, pulling her close. 2 weeks and I will be back, I promise." At the airport the next morning, their goodbye was bittersweet. Victoria watched his plane take off, touching the lotus pendant at her throat, and hoped that the distance would not change what they had built. She had no way of knowing that in just a few days, everything would fall apart. The first week of Dongwoo being back in Seoul was exactly what he had promised. He called Victoria every morning her time, which was late evening for him. They video chatted for at least an hour every day, talking about everything and nothing. He sent her photos of Seoul, of his office view, of the food he was eating. She sent him photos of her day, of events she was coordinating, of the Bay Area sunset. The distance was hard, but it felt manageable. Then, on day 8, everything changed. Victoria was at work, putting final touches on a corporate retreat setup in Santa Clara, when her phone rang with a video call from Dongwoo. It was only 2 in the afternoon California time, which meant it was 6 in the morning in Seoul, way earlier than he usually called. "Hey," she answered, immediately noticing the tension in his face. "What is wrong?" "It is Hana," Dongwoo said, and Victoria could hear the barely controlled panic in his voice. "My sister, she is missing." "What do you mean missing?" "She was supposed to be at the family home in Seoul, but when my mother went to check on her this morning, her room was empty. She left a note saying she could not do this anymore and that we should not look for her. Her phone is turned off, and she is not responding to any messages." "Do you think she is in danger?" Victoria asked, her own anxiety spiking. "No, I think she ran away. My father has been pushing her hard about the arranged marriage, and she has been getting more and more upset about it. I should have intervened sooner, should have protected her better." Dongwoo ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Victoria had learned meant he was really stressed. "My mother just told me that Hana's passport is missing. She could be anywhere." "Have you checked flight records?" "Working on that now. Victoria, I am sorry, but I am going to be difficult to reach for the next few days. I need to focus all my energy on finding her before my father does something drastic." "Of course, do what you need to do. Is there anything I can do to help?" Dongwoo was quiet for a moment. "Actually, there might be. One of my investigators just found a credit card charge from 2 days ago. She was in Los Angeles. If she is still in the States, she might try to stay there. I have contacts in LA, but Hana is smart and she knows all the people who work for me. She will avoid anyone connected to the family." "You want me to go to Los Angeles?" Victoria asked, immediately understanding. "I know it is a huge ask, and you have your own work and life, but you are a stranger to her. If you could go there and help my people search, maybe check places a young Korean woman might go, it could make a difference. I will cover all your expenses, and I will owe you more than I can ever repay." Victoria thought about her schedule. She had 2 events this week, but her assistant could handle them. This was important. Hana was important to Dongwoo, which meant she was important to Victoria. "Send me the details," she said. "I will drive down today." The relief on Dongwoo's face was immediate and intense. Thank you so much. I will have my assistant coordinate with you about hotels and anything else you need. And Victoria, please be careful. Hana is not dangerous, but she is desperate, and desperate people can be unpredictable." 6 hours later, Victoria was checking into a luxury hotel in Beverly Hills, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Dongwoo's assistant had arranged everything, including a rental car and a list of potential locations where Hana might be. Victoria had also been sent a photo of Hana, a beautiful young woman with delicate features and sad eyes. The search began immediately. Dongwoo had investigators covering the obvious places, high-end hotels and restaurants, places where a wealthy young woman might feel comfortable. He wanted Victoria to check the less obvious locations. Coffee shops in Koreatown, bookstores, art galleries, places where someone trying to blend in might hide. For 2 days, Victoria drove all over Los Angeles, from West Hollywood to Santa Monica to Venice Beach. She showed Hana's photo to baristas and shop owners, asking if anyone had seen her. Most had not, or if they had, they were not saying. It was frustrating and exhausting, but Victoria kept going, driven by the memory of Dongwoo's desperate voice on the phone. On the 3rd day, Victoria got a tip from a bookstore owner in Long Beach. A young Korean woman matching Hana's description had been coming in every afternoon for the past few days, always buying books and sitting in the corner reading. The owner remembered her because she had recommended several Korean literature titles that they did not stock. Victoria staked out the bookstore, and sure enough, around 2 in the afternoon, Hana walked in. She was dressed simply in jeans and a hoodie, looking nothing like the daughter of a wealthy family. Victoria waited until Hana had settled into her usual corner before approaching. "Hana Kang," she said quietly. Hana's head snapped up, fear flashing across her face. She stood quickly, ready to run, but Victoria held up her hands in a peaceful gesture. "I am not here to drag you back," Victoria said quickly. "Your brother sent me, but only because he is worried about you. I am not going to force you to do anything. I just want to talk. I do not know you, Hana said, eyeing the exit. My name is Victoria Chen. I am dating your brother. Well, I was. We met a few weeks ago in California. Victoria pulled out her phone and showed Hana a photo of her and Dongwoo together. He is in Seoul trying to keep your father from sending every resource he has to find you. But he wanted someone who was not connected to the family business to check on you, to make sure you are okay. Hana studied the photo, then looked at Victoria with uncertainty. Dongwoo is dating you. He never dates anyone seriously. Apparently I am special, Victoria said with a small smile. Look, I get it. You are running from something you do not want. I am not going to pretend I understand your exact situation, but I know what it is like to feel trapped. Can we just talk? If you still want me to leave after that, I will. Hana hesitated, then slowly sat back down. Victoria took the seat across from her. How did you find me? Hana asked. Credit card records and a lot of walking around showing your picture to people. You are pretty good at disappearing, but you left a few traces. My father's going to be so angry. From what Dongwoo has told me, your father is already angry, but Dongwoo is trying to protect you. He called off your engagement. Hana's eyes widened. He what? He told your father the engagement is off and that he would handle any business fallout. Your life is your own. Tears welled up in Hana's eyes. He should not have done that. Father will make his life miserable. He is okay with that if it means you are free, Victoria said gently. That is the kind of brother he is. They talked for over an hour. Hana explained that she had fled to Los Angeles because she had visited once on a family trip years ago and loved it. She had been planning her escape for months, saving money and making arrangements. But now that she was here, she felt lost. She did not know what to do next. What do you want? Victoria asked. Not what your father wants or what is expected. What do you actually want for your life? I want to study literature, Hana said immediately. I want to go to graduate school and maybe teach someday. I want to choose who I love if I love anyone at all. I want to make my own decisions. Then you should do that, Victoria said. But running away is not the same as moving forward. Running is just fear in a different location. She told Hana an abbreviated version of her own story, about losing control of her life and finding it again. About the difference between running from pain and running toward something better. Your brother fought to legitimize your family business. He fights every day against people's perceptions. He is not running, he is building something new while honoring where he came from. You can do the same thing. You can stand up and claim the life you want, but do it honestly. Do not hide. Demand your freedom. Hana broke down crying, all the fear and stress of the past weeks pouring out. Victoria moved to sit beside her, putting an arm around the younger woman's shoulders and letting her cry. When Hana finally composed herself, she looked at Victoria with red-rimmed eyes. Will you help me talk to Dongwoo? I do not think I can do it alone. Of course, Victoria said. They went back to Victoria's hotel room and set up a video call. When Dongwoo's face appeared on the screen and he saw his sister, relief crashed over his features so intensely that he had to look away for a moment to compose himself. I am sorry, Hana said immediately in Korean, then switched to English for Victoria's benefit. I am so sorry I scared everyone. I am just glad you are safe, Dongwoo said. Hana, I meant what I said to father. The engagement is off. You do not have to marry anyone you do not want to marry. He is going to disown you. Let him. I have built enough on my own that I will be fine. But you need to tell me what you want. If you want to stay in America, I will help you. If you want to come home but live independently, I will support that too. Just please, no more running. Hana looked at Victoria, who nodded encouragingly. I want to stay in California. I want to go to graduate school. I want to build my own life. Then that is what we will make happen, Dongwoo said with finality. I will arrange everything. Hana, you are my sister and I love you. Your happiness matters more than father's business alliances. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with Dongwoo and Hana working through logistics and emotional territory. Victoria stepped out to give them privacy, but when Dongwoo called her back, His expression was soft with gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "I do not know how you found her or what you said, but thank you for bringing her back safely." "She is a good person who was stuck in an impossible situation," Victoria said. "She just needed someone to tell her it was okay to choose herself." After the call ended, Victoria helped Hannah make arrangements to stay in California properly. They researched graduate programs, looked at apartments, and started building a plan. By the time Victoria drove back to the Bay Area 3 days later, Hannah was enrolled in a graduate program at UCLA and had a safe place to live with Dongwoo's financial support. The crisis had brought Victoria and Dongwoo even closer. She had seen him at his most vulnerable, and he had trusted her with his family's most personal problems. When he finally returned to California 2 weeks later, their reunion at the airport was intense and emotional. "I missed you so much," Dongwoo said, holding her tightly. "I missed you too," Victoria whispered into his chest. "But we made it through." "We did," he agreed, "and we will make it through whatever comes next." Victoria believed him. She had no idea that the biggest test of their relationship was just around the corner. Life settled into a new rhythm over the next month. Dongwoo split his time between Seoul and California, spending 2 weeks in each location. When he was in Seoul, they video called daily, and when he was in California, they spent nearly every evening together. Victoria met more of his associates and started to understand the complexities of his business world. Hannah became a regular part of their lives, often joining them for dinners and slowly transforming from a scared runaway into a confident graduate student. Victoria felt happier than she could remember being in years. Her career was thriving. She had coordinated several high-profile events that led to more prestigious clients. Her relationship with Dongwoo deepened every day, built on trust and genuine affection. For the first time since her mother's death, she allowed herself to believe that good things could last. Then Caleb showed up. Victoria was at work, setting up for a tech company's product launch in Mountain View, when someone called her name. She turned and felt ice flood her veins. Caleb Morrison stood there, looking exactly like he had 3 years ago when he had left her financially ruined and emotionally devastated. Same charming smile, same expensive casual clothes, same air of confidence that had once fooled her into thinking he was someone worth trusting. "Victoria," he said, approaching with his arms out like he expected a hug. "Wow, you look amazing. It has been too long." "Not long enough," Victoria said coldly, taking a step back. "What do you want, Caleb?" "Hey, I know I messed up before," he said, his smile faltering slightly. "But I have changed. I have been in therapy working on myself. I wanted to find you and apologize properly, maybe make amends." "I do not want your apology, and I definitely do not want you anywhere near me. I spent a year paying off the debt you left me with. You do not get to just show up and act like we are old friends." I know. I was a horrible person back then, but I am different now. I have a good job, I am stable. I just want a chance to prove I have changed." "I do not care if you have changed," Victoria said flatly. "I have moved on with my life and you are not part of it. Please leave." Caleb's expression hardened slightly, the charm cracking to show something uglier underneath. "I heard you are dating someone new, some rich Korean guy. Guess you traded up, huh?" "My personal life is none of your business. Leave, Caleb. I am working." "Fine," he said, putting his hands up. "But I am not giving up. I owe you a real apology, and I am going to make sure you get it." He walked away, and Victoria stood there trembling with anger and old fear. Chelsea had warned her years ago that Caleb was a manipulator, but Victoria had been too lonely and vulnerable to listen. By the time she finally ended things, he had maxed out credit cards in her name, borrowed money from her friends that he never repaid, and left her emotionally shredded. She pulled out her phone and called Dongwoo, needing to hear his voice. He answered immediately, as he always did when she called. "Hey, is everything okay? You sound upset." Victoria told him about Caleb showing up, and she could hear Dongwoo's anger even across the distance. "Do you want me to have someone deal with him?" Dongwoo asked. "Not violently," he added quickly. "Just make it clear that he needs to stay away from you." No, I can handle Caleb. He is a coward. He will not actually do anything. If you are sure. But if he bothers you again, please tell me. I do not like the idea of anyone making you uncomfortable. They talked for a few more minutes until Victoria felt calmer. She finished her workday and went home, trying to put Caleb out of her mind. She succeeded for the most part, until 2 weeks later when everything exploded. Victoria was having lunch with Chelsea at a restaurant in Palo Alto when her phone started blowing up with notifications. Confused, she opened her social media to find she had been tagged in dozens of posts. Her stomach dropped as she started reading. Someone had leaked a story to several business blogs and social media accounts, claiming that Victoria Chen was a con artist who had seduced Kang Dongwoo as part of an elaborate blackmail scheme. The posts included evidence in the form of photos and text message screenshots that appeared to show Victoria planning to target wealthy men for money. "Oh my God," Chelsea breathed, reading over Victoria's shoulder. "Victoria, this is fake, right? Someone made this up." "Of course it is fake," Victoria said, her hands shaking as she scrolled through the increasingly vicious comments. "But Caleb, this has Caleb written all over it." She was right. As she dug deeper into the posts, she recognized photos from her relationship with Caleb that had been taken out of context and doctored to look like evidence of a pattern. Text messages she had sent him years ago about being stressed over money had been edited to make it seem like she was planning to scam someone. Her phone rang. It was Dongwoo. "I just saw the posts," he said without preamble. "Victoria, I know this is not true. Someone is trying to sabotage us." "It is my ex-boyfriend Caleb," Victoria said, fighting tears. "He showed up at my work 2 weeks ago and I told him to leave me alone. This is his revenge. I will have my legal team handle this. We will sue him for defamation, get everything taken down, and make sure everyone knows it is fabricated." But as the day went on, the situation got worse. The story gained traction in certain business circles, particularly among people who had always been suspicious of Dongwoo's family background. His business rivals saw an opportunity and amplified the story, adding their own speculation about Victoria being a plant sent by competitors to compromise him. By evening, Dongwoo was fielding angry calls from his board of directors in Seoul. They demanded he cut all ties with Victoria immediately to protect the company's reputation. Some of his American business associates also contacted him, expressing concern about his judgment. Victoria sat in her apartment, watching her phone explode with notifications, hate messages from strangers, and concerned calls from clients worried about being associated with a scandal. Chelsea sat beside her, furious on her behalf, and already working her tech skills to find proof that the evidence had been manipulated. When Dongwoo video called her at 10 that night, she could see the strain on his face. "My board is threatening to remove me as CEO if I do not end our relationship," he said without preamble. "They say I am putting the entire company at risk." "Then maybe you should end it," Victoria said quietly, her heart breaking even as she said the words. "I do not want to ruin everything you have built." "No," Dongwoo said firmly. "I am not going to let lies destroy us. But Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Victoria felt ice flood her veins. "What?" "The evidence they are showing, the photos and messages. I know they are out of context, but can you explain them to me? My investigators are looking into everything, but I need to understand the full story so I can fight this properly." "Are you asking if I'm a con artist?" Victoria asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "No, I am asking you to help me understand the situation so I can defend you effectively. If you believe me, you should not need me to explain anything. You should just know it is fake." "Victoria, I do believe you, but I am under enormous pressure right now, and I need to have all the facts. The fact is that someone I used to date is destroying me because I rejected him. The fact is that your business rivals are using this to hurt you. And the fact is that you are sitting there asking me to prove I am not lying to you. If you cannot just trust my word after everything we have been through, then what is the point?" "That is not fair," Dongwoo said, frustration creeping into his voice. I am trying to protect you and protect us. I cannot fight this battle if you will not work with me. I should not have to fight to prove my innocence to you, Victoria said, tears finally spilling over. You either believe me or you do not. I am trying to believe you, but you have to understand the position I am in. My entire company is at stake. And my entire life is being destroyed right now, but I am not questioning whether you are worth it. The conversation deteriorated from there. Both of them hurt and defensive, until finally Victoria said the words she instantly regretted. Maybe everyone was right about us. Maybe we are from two different worlds for this to work. Dongwoo's face went carefully blank. If that is what you believe, then perhaps they were right. Get out, Victoria said, her voice breaking. Just go back to Seoul and protect your precious company. I will deal with this mess on my own like I always do. Victoria. She ended the call and threw her phone across the room, then collapsed in sobs. Chelsea held her while she cried, murmuring reassurances that everything would be okay, but Victoria did not believe her. Everything she had built with Dongwoo had just shattered, and she did not know how to put it back together. The next few days were the worst Victoria had experienced since her mother's death. The scandal continued to spread, amplified by people who enjoyed tearing down anyone associated with wealth and power. She received hateful messages, lost 2 major clients who did not want to be connected to controversy, and had to endure pitying looks from colleagues who had seen the posts. Chelsea became her fiercest defender, working around the clock to prove the evidence had been fabricated. She examined the metadata on the photos and found they had been altered. She traced the original sources of the posts and found connections to Caleb and to business rivals of Dongwoo's who had lost a major deal to Kang Enterprises months earlier. Victoria, this is a coordinated attack, Chelsea said, showing her spreadsheets of evidence. Caleb approached Dongwoo's competitors and sold them the story. They fabricated most of the evidence together and paid to have it amplified across social media. This is not just your ex being petty. This is corporate sabotage using you as the weapon. Can we prove it? Victoria asked. I am working on it, but I need a few more days to build an airtight case. Meanwhile, Dongwoo had returned to Seoul to handle the crisis from that end. He did not call Victoria, and she did not call him. The silence between them was painful, a wound that got worse with each passing hour. Victoria replayed their last conversation over and over, hatting the things she had said but also still angry that he had questioned her at all. Hana called her on the 3rd day, upset and confused. What happened between you and my brother? He will not talk about it, but he looks terrible. We had a fight, Victoria said. A bad one. About the fake scandal. Victoria, you have to know he does not believe any of that. He has been fighting with the board constantly, defending you to everyone who will listen. Then why did he ask me to prove I was innocent? Victoria asked, her voice breaking. Because he is an idiot sometimes, Hana said bluntly. He has spent his whole life dealing with people who lie and manipulate. Even though he knows you are different, old habits are hard to break. But Victoria, he loves you. I have never seen him like this with anyone. I love him too, Victoria whispered. But I do not know if love is enough when trust is broken. Trust can be rebuilt if both people are willing, Hana said. Do not give up on him yet. While Victoria spiraled emotionally, Dongwoo was fighting his own battles in Seoul. The board meeting was brutal, with members demanding he step down as CEO to protect the company's reputation. His father, who rarely involved himself in company business anymore, had emerged from semi-retirement to side with the board. You have brought shame on this family, his father said in Korean, his voice cold. I worked for decades to legitimize our name, and you are destroying it for some woman you barely know. I know her better than I have known anyone in my life, Dongwoo shot back. And she is being attacked by liars who want to hurt me. I will not abandon her. Then you will lose this company. Choose. Dongwoo looked at the faces around the boardroom table, people he had worked with for years, people who cared more about profits and reputation than truth or loyalty. In that moment, he realized what Victoria had been trying to tell him. If he had to prove her innocence to satisfy these people, then their trust in him was already broken. "I choose Victoria," he said clearly. "And I choose to fight for the truth. If the board wants to remove me, then do it. But I will not betray the woman I love to appease your fears." The room erupted in arguments, but Dongwoo stood his ground. He assigned his best investigator to work in parallel with what he suspected Victoria's friend was doing to find proof of the fabrication. He also started making calls to business associates who actually valued integrity, building a coalition of support. 3 days later, his investigator presented findings that matched what Chelsea had discovered. The photos were edited. The messages were taken wildly out of context from years ago, and there was a money trail leading from Caleb to a group of investors who had lost a major deal to Dongwoo 6 months earlier. Dongwoo immediately prepared to fly back to California, but first, he did something that shocked everyone. He called a press conference in Seoul and publicly addressed the scandal. "There have been allegations made against someone I care about deeply," he said to the gathered reporters. "These allegations are false, fabricated by people who wish to harm me professionally. I have evidence proving the falsification, and I will be pursuing legal action against everyone involved. More importantly, I want to make it clear that Victoria Chen is a woman of integrity and strength, and I am honored to know her. Anyone who continues to spread these lies will face consequences." The press conference went viral, picked up by business news outlets around the world. Public opinion started to shift as people realized this was not just celebrity drama, but corporate warfare. Dongwoo's willingness to publicly defend Victoria, even at potential cost to himself, changed the narrative. But he still had not talked to Victoria directly. He did not know if she would even want to hear from him after the way their last conversation had ended. He had let his fear and the pressure from his board make him doubt her, even for a moment, and that betrayal cut deeper than any fabricated scandal. Back in California, Victoria watched the press conference video that Chelsea showed her, tears streaming down her face. Dongwoo looked exhausted but determined, and every word he spoke was a defense of her character. He had chosen her over his board, over his father's approval, over the easy path of cutting her loose and moving on. "You need to call him," Chelsea said gently. "I do not know if I can," Victoria admitted. "I am still so hurt." "I know, but he is hurting too. And he is fighting for you, Victoria. Not just fighting to clear your name, but fighting to prove he believes in you." Before Victoria could decide what to do, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something made her answer. "Victoria Chen," a male voice said. "This is Detective Rodriguez with the San Jose Police Department. We have arrested Caleb Morrison on charges of fraud and defamation. We also have warrants out for 3 other individuals involved in the fabrication of evidence against you. Mr. Kang's legal team has been working with us to build the case, and we wanted to let you know that you are completely cleared of any wrongdoing." Victoria could barely process the words. Caleb was arrested. "Yes, ma'am. He will be facing serious charges. The evidence of his involvement is substantial. You should also know that Mr. Kang has requested no contact with the investigation, even though his company funded it. He specifically said he wanted this handled through proper legal channels to ensure there was no appearance of impropriety." After the call ended, Victoria sat in stunned silence. Dongwoo had used his resources to expose the truth, but he had done it carefully, ethically, making sure everything was above board. He had protected her without asking for credit or using it as leverage to win her back. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she saw it was from Dongwoo's assistant. "Mr. Kang wanted you to know that all legal action is proceeding. He also wanted me to tell you that he does not expect forgiveness, but he hopes you know that he never doubted you in his heart. His fear made him ask the wrong questions, and he regrets that deeply. He will return to California in 3 days. If you wish to speak with him, he will make himself available. If you do not, he will respect your decision." Victoria read the message 3 times, her heart aching. She had been so angry at him for questioning her, but she understood now that it had not been doubt in her character. It had been fear of losing everything he had worked for, combined with a lifetime of being surrounded by people who could not be trusted. His mistake had been letting that fear speak louder than his heart, but he had corrected it. He had chosen her, publicly and without reservation. She spent the next 2 days working with Chelsea to compile their own evidence, preparing for the legal proceedings. The business blogs that had initially spread the story published retractions. The investors involved in the scheme were exposed and facing their own legal troubles. Victoria's reputation was not just restored, but enhanced. People admired her for weathering the storm with grace. But none of that mattered as much as the decision she now faced. Could she forgive Dongwoo? Could they rebuild trust after it had been cracked? She thought about the lotus on her shoulder, about rising from the mud. Relationships were messy. People made mistakes. The question was not whether Dongwoo had hurt her, because he had. The question was whether he was worth forgiving, worth fighting for. Victoria touched the lotus pendant at her throat and made her decision. On the day Dongwoo was scheduled to return to California, Victoria drove to the San Francisco airport. She did not tell him she was coming. She just knew she needed to be there when he landed, needed to see his face and make her decision based on what she saw in his eyes. She waited in the arrivals area, her heart pounding. When Dongwoo finally emerged through the doors, pulling a small suitcase behind him, he looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, his usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. He was looking at his phone, probably checking messages, and had not seen her yet. Victoria stepped forward. Dongwoo. His head snapped up, and the expression that crossed his face was pure shock followed by desperate hope. Victoria, I did not know you would be here. I needed to see you, she said. I needed to talk. Of course, anything you want. He looked nervous in a way she had never seen before, this powerful man who commanded boardrooms and built international business empires, nervous about what she might say. They walked to the parking garage in silence, the tension between them almost unbearable. Once they were in her car, Victoria did not start the engine. She just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to find the right words. I watched your press conference, she said finally, and I heard about Caleb's arrest, about everything you did to expose the truth. I should have done it sooner. I should have believed you without hesitation. Yes, you should have, Victoria agreed, and Dongwoo flinched. But I understand why you did not. You have spent your whole life surrounded by people who want to use you. Even your family sees you as a tool for their ambitions. So when your board and your father and everyone else started questioning me, you fell back into old patterns of protecting yourself first. That is not an excuse, Dongwoo said quietly. No, it is not, but it is an explanation, and I have spent the past few weeks thinking about whether an explanation is enough. What did you decide? Victoria finally turned to look at him. I decided that perfect people do not exist. I decided that you made a mistake, but then you spent every moment since then trying to fix it. Not trying to win me back with grand gestures, but actually fixing the problem. Making sure the truth came out. Protecting me without asking for credit. That matters. Hope flickered in Dongwoo's eyes. Does this mean you forgive me? I am working on it, Victoria said honestly. I forgive you for being scared. I forgive you for being human, but the trust we had, that is going to take time to rebuild. I will spend however long it takes, Dongwoo said fervently. Victoria, I love you, and I am so sorry I let my fear make you doubt that even for a moment. I love you too, Victoria said, and saying it felt like releasing a breath she had been holding for weeks. But we need to talk about how we move forward from here. They drove to Victoria's apartment, and over the next several hours, they had the most honest conversation of their relationship. Victoria explained how deeply it had hurt to have him question her when she needed him to just believe. Dongwoo explained the intense pressure he had been under and how he had let it cloud his judgment. They talked about boundaries, about communication, about what they needed from each other to feel secure. I need to know that when things get hard, you will come to me, not away from me, Victoria said. I need to know that your first instinct will be to trust me, even when outside voices are saying something different. And I need to know that you will not shut me out when you are hurt, Dongwoo countered. You ended our last call instead of fighting through the discomfort. I understand why, but we both have a tendency to protect ourselves by withdrawing. You are right, Victoria admitted. I was so hurt that I wanted to hurt you back, so I pushed you away. We are both damaged people trying to figure out how to be healthy together, Dongwoo said. But I believe we can do it if we are both willing to be vulnerable. I am willing, Victoria said. Are you? Yes, completely. They sealed the promise with a kiss, and for the first time in weeks, Victoria felt the tight knot of anxiety in her chest begin to loosen. Over the next few weeks, they rebuilt their relationship slowly and intentionally. Dongwoo made the decision to permanently relocate his base of operations to California, setting up a Kang Enterprises office in San Francisco and promoting trusted executives in Seoul to handle day-to-day operations there. It was a massive restructuring, but he did it without hesitation. My life is wherever you are, he told Victoria when she questioned whether he was sacrificing too much. I have spent my whole life building a company. Now I want to build a life. They also started creating something together. Inspired by Dongwoo's great uncle and the impact he had on Victoria's life, they established a foundation dedicated to providing second chances to people rebuilding their lives after trauma or loss. The foundation offered scholarships, job training, mental health resources, and mentorship programs. They called it the Lotus Foundation, and its logo was the same lotus design that graced Victoria's shoulder. Hana became involved in the project, using her literature studies to develop creative writing programs for participants. Chelsea helped build the tech infrastructure. Even some of Dongwoo's business associates contributed funding and expertise. The foundation's first location opened in Oakland, in the neighborhood where Victoria had grown up. The opening ceremony was emotional, with Victoria speaking about her journey from despair to hope. She did not shy away from the difficult parts, the suicide attempt that almost was, the struggle to rebuild, the recent scandal that had tried to tear her down again. She spoke about the old man who had given her a tattoo and a reason to choose life. And she spoke about how everyone deserves a second chance to bloom. When Dongwoo took the microphone after her, he talked about his great uncle, about how the man had walked away from a family legacy of violence to create beauty instead. He talked about the courage it takes to start over, to choose a different path even when it is hard. My great-uncle saw potential in people that they could not see in themselves, Dongwoo said. He gave them a mark of hope and sent them back into the world to bloom. This foundation will continue that legacy. We will see your potential. We will invest in your second chances, and we will watch you bloom. There was not a dry eye in the room. That night after the ceremony, Victoria and Dongwoo sat on the balcony of his San Francisco penthouse, looking out over the city lights. Dongwoo had his arm around her, and Victoria was tucked against his side, exactly where she wanted to be. Thank you for giving me a second chance, Dongwoo said quietly. After I messed up so badly, you could have walked away, but you chose to stay and fight for us. You fought for me first, Victoria said. When it mattered most, you chose me over everything else. That is what gave me the courage to choose you back. I will keep choosing you, Dongwoo promised, every single day. Good, Victoria said with a smile, because I am not going anywhere. 3 months after the foundation's opening, Victoria's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The Lotus Foundation was thriving, helping dozens of people every week. Her event planning business had not only recovered from the scandal but had grown, as people respected her resilience and integrity. And her relationship with Dongwoo had deepened into something unshakable. They had learned to communicate better, to voice concerns before they became resentments. When Dongwoo felt the old fears creeping in, he told Victoria instead of letting them fester. When Victoria felt herself wanting to withdraw, she forced herself to stay present and work through the discomfort. It was not always easy, but it was always worth it. One evening, Dongwoo told Victoria to dress nicely because he had a surprise. She put on a simple black dress, the kind that was elegant without being too formal, and let her hair fall in loose waves. She wore the lotus necklace he had given her months ago, which had become as much a part of her as the tattoo itself. He picked her up in his car and drove to Napa Valley, about an hour north of San Francisco. Victoria had been to Napa before for events, but she had never just gone to enjoy it. The vineyards were beautiful in the early evening light, rolling hills covered in perfectly ordered rows of grapevines. Dongwoo pulled up to a small, exclusive vineyard that Victoria did not recognize. A staff member greeted them and led them through the property to a private terrace overlooking the valley. The table was set for two, with candles and flowers and a view that took Victoria's breath away. "This is beautiful," she said, turning to Dongwoo. "What is the occasion?" "Does there need to be an occasion for me to want to spend a beautiful evening with the woman I love?" he asked with a smile. They had dinner as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The food was incredible, but Victoria barely tasted it. She was too focused on Dongwoo, on the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. After dinner, as they stood at the railing looking out over the vineyards, Dongwoo took her hand. "Victoria, I want to tell you something. When I first saw you at that event, when I saw your tattoo, I thought I was searching for information about my great uncle. But I realize now that I was really searching for this. For you. For someone who understood what it means to rise from the mud and choose to bloom anyway." "Dongwoo," Victoria started, but he gently touched her lips. "Let me finish. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You have made me believe that I can be more than my family name, more than my company, more than my past. You have made me want to be better, and I do not want to waste any more time." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Victoria's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a stunning ring. The band was platinum, set with a single perfect diamond. But what made Victoria's eyes fill with tears was the detail on either side of the diamond. Tiny lotus flowers, rendered in the exact style of her tattoo. Dongwoo got down on one knee. "Victoria Chen, will you marry me? Will you continue to choose to bloom with me through whatever mud we encounter? Will you build a life with me?" Victoria was crying now, happy tears that she did not bother to wipe away. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that was full of promise and joy. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling so widely it almost hurt. "I love you so much," Victoria said. "I cannot believe this is my life." "Believe it," Dongwoo said, touching his forehead to hers. "This is just the beginning." The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. They decided on a small ceremony in Napa, just close friends and family. Hana was Victoria's maid of honor, and Chelsea stood beside her as a bridesmaid. Dongwoo's mother flew in from Seoul and welcomed Victoria with genuine warmth. Even his father came, though he remained somewhat distant. But the fact that he came at all was progress. The wedding day itself was perfect. They had the ceremony at the same vineyard where Dongwoo had proposed, under a canopy of flowers with the valley spread out behind them. Victoria wore a simple white dress that showed the lotus tattoo on her shoulder. Dongwoo wore a perfectly tailored dark suit and cried when he saw her walking toward him. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Dongwoo promised to choose her every day, to trust her even when fear whispered doubt, to build a life that honored both their pasts and their future. Victoria promised to stay present even when it was hard, to believe in their love even when challenges came, to bloom beside him through all seasons. When the officiant pronounced them married and Dongwoo kissed her, the small gathering of guests erupted in applause. Victoria felt like her heart might burst from happiness. At the reception, they slow danced under string lights as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Dongwoo traced the lotus on her shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar and beloved. "My great-uncle would have loved you," he said softly. "He would have been so proud to see how you took his gift and turned it into something that helps so many people." "I think he is watching," Victoria said, "and I think he is happy." They spent their honeymoon in South Korea, with Victoria finally seeing the country that had shaped Dongwoo. He showed her Seoul, introduced her to extended family, and took her to the old neighborhood where his great-uncle had lived before leaving. They visited his grandmother's grave and told her about the foundation, about their marriage, about the life they were building. When they returned to California, they moved into a new home in Los Altos Hills, a beautiful house with views of the bay and enough space for the life they were planning. Victoria continued her event work, but focused primarily on fundraisers for the foundation and other nonprofits. Dongwoo successfully managed Kang Enterprises from the California office, proving that it was possible to lead without sacrificing the life he wanted. 6 months after their wedding, Victoria and Dongwoo stood together at the opening of the Lotus Foundation's third location, this one in San Jose. The foundation had grown beyond their wildest expectations, helping hundreds of people in its first year. They had expanded their programs to include not just career training and mental health services, but also creative arts programs, financial literacy courses, and community building initiatives. The San Jose location was special because it included an art studio where participants could explore creative expression as part of their healing. And in that studio, one wall was dedicated to Lotus artwork created by the people the foundation had helped. Each person who completed the program was invited to create their own lotus, in whatever medium spoke to them, and add it to the wall. At the opening ceremony, Victoria stood at the microphone, looking out at the crowd of donors, participants, volunteers, and community members. Dongwoo stood to the side, watching her with pride. "When I was 25 years old, I was in the darkest place I had ever been," Victoria began, her voice clear and strong. "I had lost my mother, lost my savings, lost my sense of purpose. I was planning to end my life because I could not see a way forward. But then I walked into a small tattoo shop in San Francisco, and an old man I had never met looked at me and saw potential I could not see in myself." She gestured to the lotus on her shoulder. "He gave me this tattoo and told me I would bloom, but only if I chose to. That night I chose life, and every day since I have had to keep choosing to work hard, choosing to trust people, choosing to love even when it was scary. And those choices led me here, to this beautiful life surrounded by people I love and work that matters. The Lotus Foundation exists because we believe everyone deserves the chance to choose to bloom. No matter what mud you are stuck in, no matter how dark things seem, you have the potential to rise. And we are here to help you see that potential and give you the resources to make it real." The crowd applauded, and Victoria stepped back from the microphone. Dongwoo came to stand beside her, taking her hand as they watched the ribbon-cutting ceremony. After the formalities, they walked through the space, talking to participants and volunteers. A young woman approached Victoria nervously. She was maybe 22, with kind eyes and a shy smile. "Ms. Kang, I wanted to thank you. I came to the Oakland location 3 months ago when I had just gotten out of a bad situation. I did not have a job, did not have any confidence, but the programs here helped me. I have a job now, a good one, and I am taking classes at community college. I just wanted you to know that this place saved my life." She pulled up her sleeve to show a fresh tattoo on her upper arm, a lotus, rendered in black ink with beautiful detail. "I got this to remember that I can rise above anything, just like you did." Victoria hugged the young woman tightly, feeling the full circle of the journey. She had received hope from an old man in a tattoo shop, and now she was passing that hope forward to others. This was the legacy Dongwoo's great-uncle had started, and it would continue long after they were gone. Later that evening, Victoria and Dongwoo drove home, exhausted but happy. As they pulled into their driveway, Victoria looked at their beautiful home and felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "What is it?" Dongwoo asked, noticing her expression. "I was just thinking about how different my life is now compared to 5 years ago, how I almost was not here to experience any of this, and how grateful I am that I chose to bloom instead." Dongwoo brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I am grateful for that choice every single day. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Victoria. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me." "You already are that man," Victoria said. "You just needed someone to help you see it." They walked into their home hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. Their life together was not perfect. They still had challenges and disagreements and moments of doubt. But they faced everything together, choosing each other and choosing to bloom through every season. The lotus on Victoria's shoulder was more than just a tattoo now. It was a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. It was a symbol of the old man who had seen her potential when she could not. It was a connection to Dongwu and the love they had built. And it was a promise to everyone who came through the Foundation's doors that second chances were real, that redemption was possible, that anyone could rise from the mud and bloom beautifully. Victoria and Dongwu had won. They had one love, partnership, purpose, and the kind of life that honored both their scars and their triumphs. And every day they woke up and chose to keep winning, one lotus bloom at a time.